find all of the reasons why I am successful or I'm happy or I'm in, and watch your brain remember. I had a client yesterday and she was just like, I can't, like I'm in it. I can't remember the last time I felt happy. I was like, well, how do you want to feel? I want to feel happy. And I was like, okay. So we started to do this exercise and look through the different lens. And then all of a sudden she remembered she played tennis on the weekend. She had a coffee and she watched this movie. Then she was just in this fit of laughter, but she couldn't see it before that. Her brain had forgotten that. And I was like, see, you are actually in that moment very happy on the weekend. So let's cultivate more of that because we looked at it through. And the thing is, we can't change the situation. It's shit. Like we can't. But what we can do is we can start to get curious about maybe looking at it through a different lens. And you know what? Once you start to change your vibration, change your energy, this shifts everything. And that's when you start moving forward.
Are you feeling lost in your career? Or you want to have a greater impact, but you don't know where to start? Welcome to Kinda Planned, the podcast where we help you unlock the opportunities that you can't plan for. Through engaging conversations with expert guests, we help you unlock the mindsets, strategies, and tools that you need to build the career of your dreams. So subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Alex Cutterford, and let's take a moment to unlock your next opportunity. Welcome back, and today I'm lucky enough to have Louise Siwicki with me. Really excited to have you on the podcast and have a chat today, Louise.
Thank you so much, Alex, for having me. It's been a long time coming, but I believe in divine timing, so this is the perfect time. So Let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So Louise is a fertility and postnatal specialist coach and also head of country development Australia for the European Fertility Society. So Louise, would you maybe want to share what is it that a fertility coach does and who do you work with?
I guess a fertility coach, I support mostly high-performing women and men because it's not just a female issue, it's obviously a male issue as well, who are struggling to, they've up until this point in their life, they have achieved success. Anything they've put their mind to, they've essentially achieved. The harder you work, the more success you achieve, the higher the career ladder that you climb, all of the things, and control and certainty and all of those things have worked up until now. And then all of a sudden you want to have a baby, and having a baby isn't like that. It doesn't, babies don't respond well to control and certainty and being in that really masculine energy, which a lot of us tend to get into. So there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of fear and everything tied up in that. So it's really about working with my clients to understand what it is that's kind of, I guess, that story that's worked so well for them up until now, but maybe we have to relearn, and maybe maybe there's another way to think, maybe there's another way to believe, or maybe there's another way that will help this baby essentially, the soul baby come into earth form. So it's really hard because if you've spent 35, 40, 45 years of your life thinking and believing and being in a certain energy and a belief system, then it can feel really messy when you finally realise that maybe this isn't serving you and I've got to learn another way. So it's really about supporting that transition and that process, and because we've all got it inside of us, every single one of us. It's just sometimes you need someone to be your North Star, hold your hand and say, you know what, together we can get through this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess for people that maybe haven't gone through it or thought much about it, like what are the different types of fertility challenges that men and women might go through?
I guess, there's so many different types. We've got unexplained infertility, then you've got explained infertility with all of the different types of medical conditions that can come with that. Secondary infertility is massive. And then obviously we've got solo parents these days as well, so they have to go down the IVF route. And then you've got same-sex couples as well who also have to go down the same-sex route, the medical route. So there's so many different medical types of infertility, in inverted commas, all are equally as stressful. And the thing with fertility is, I had obviously had my own journey. Mine was 6 years. I was in a job that had a lot of pressure. I was working in the legal industry. Back then, fertility was not talked about. It was very taboo. It still is. It's still a battle. There was a lot of stress. There was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of fear. And having no understanding in my workplace about that either left me feeling even more alone and more stressed and more anxious. So this just compounded. So it doesn't matter what type of fertility issues you are having, the emotional roller coaster is very real and it's very similar for everyone. We all experience stress and anxiety to the point where some of us reach burnout, depression, even anxiety levels through the roof. And it gets to the point where this life that we once felt really comfortable in, often career, we were killing it. But now we can't even seem to manage. We're not thinking straight. The stress has taken over. So it doesn't, for me, it doesn't really matter about the type. It's really about understanding kind of where you're at, what's kind of holding you on this hamster wheel, and then how do we move forward? Because there is always a way forward, but sometimes it just takes someone to show you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see it becoming a very all-consuming sort of thing for people, and particularly, like you're saying, you're working with people that are often maybe very highly engaged with their career, and they have a lot of their identity tied to their career. They love it, and they've been very driven by the ways of which they've worked. They've probably, maybe they're people that put in big hours, or they're really engaged, or really passionate about the impact that their work is having, and then all of a sudden there's this thing that becomes consuming of your life, and you're trying to keep what you've had and what you love and what's probably become your safe place, but you're also consumed by this other thing. And then that's where people would obviously be hitting that point of crashing and burning out and having all kind of challenges. I guess specifically thinking about that career context, what are some of the major challenges that people really find when in that space of trying to navigate your career whilst going through these infertility challenges?
I mean, it's so complex, isn't it? Fertility in itself is a full-time job. Put the emotional side to one side. It's all of the specialist appointments, the doctor's appointments, the blood tests, all of the things. The to-do list of all of my clients is already massive. So then you put IVF or fertility treatment in there as well. So this is it's 2 full-time jobs. And then you've got the emotional strain of it. And we feel we still feel very isolated and not safe enough to say anything, or we don't feel like we can share because we don't feel like we're understood. Unfortunately, we're still at that space. And because infertility is essentially invisible, a lot of us feel like we don't, it's kind of like, is anyone, people think I'm making it up, or if IVF is not an elective surgery. You wouldn't want to go through it if you didn't have to. But we kind of naturally go back to that space. It's the stress is overwhelming. And if you haven't told your workplace, or you don't feel you can tell your workplace, or it can, trying to hide, for me, when I was going through my treatment, you would get a call or an email from the fertility specialist, saying that you've had a negative pregnancy test, that transfer had failed. And then I'd have to go into a meeting 2 minutes later and show up to 30 people and present and act as if nothing had happened. And I just didn't have time to process the grief. Then I would just put it to one side. So it's massive. The implications are massive. And the thing is, if we don't, for me, it's really important to open the discussion, because by discussing all of this, we normalise our feelings, we normalise our emotions. I was having a conversation with a client yesterday, and she's like, I feel really resentful towards my family, coming up to Mother's Day, friends, feel a lot of anger, jealousy, like big emotions. And I love these people. I feel guilt because I'm not giving 110% to my work anymore, big emotions. And I said, that's only normal. Every one of us who is going through fertility issues feels like that. But the key is, I think, to, number one, normalise these conversations so we do feel like, we can see we're not alone in this. And that just takes the power away just a little bit. So it's, so I think, the long answer to that and the short answer is if we can normalise conversations, especially in the workplace, then we can help so many people feel less alone and maybe a little bit safer. Sharing some information with their workplace will then makes them feel that little bit more supported, and that's a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of, I guess, the negative ways that people might have experienced letting their workplace know about the challenges they're going through, and then what are some of the ways that a workplace could approach that conversation differently and more effectively and with more compassion?
I had a lady reach out to me recently, and she's experienced, it would have to be like 4 or 5 miscarriage. So it's been a long journey for her. And she said to me that in the beginning, her boss was really kind and empathetic because there's a lot of recovery time with a miscarriage as well, emotionally and physically. But by the last one, she said, I'm over this. This is her exact wording. I'm over this. If this problem continues to happen, you are replaceable, was essentially the wording. Like, it was nuts. Like, mind blown. And unfortunately, number one, if you haven't been through it, it's like with anything, it's really hard to be empathetic and truly understand. So this is why discussing, educating, just talking about this is so important. And the human side of it, we've got a lot of organisations that are offering, and this is great, offering time off. There's, 12 days of reproductive leave now for men and women, which is amazing, very helpful. Some are even offering financial help towards the cost of IVF. Incredible. But that's not addressing the human side of it, which is our mental and emotional health. And it doesn't matter if we're not addressing that, then it doesn't matter what else is happening. This person is still struggling because they are caught up in the overwhelm, the grief, the trauma, and they can't see. It's like being in the middle of a storm and you can't see how you're going to get to the other side. Like, it's oppressive. You feel like that your chest is going to cave in. There's something on your chest and you can't breathe. So we need to also be supporting our people from that human side, from that mental well-being side. And that starts, number one, with education. And it's so easy to educate yourself just that little bit, just to understand a little bit about what it's like. It's a game changer.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about that negative comment, like when you think about how much someone's identity might be tied up in their career, even more so often the identity is tied up in, particularly for a woman, like the desire to be a mother, and then to have someone like speak to you in that way, calling it like, if this problem continues, like as if you're like choosing it or something, like, and that would just be such a big blow at such a deep level. And there is statistics around the influence that particularly a direct manager has on someone's mental health, and that it's essentially the most significant, maybe next to like a significant partner. And to have someone in that position of often of authority and power to say such, even if it's just disregard, like it could just have such a big negative impact on someone's life, that could stay with them for a long time. So it is really sad when you hear people being approached in that way, but it does come back to, I guess, these people not fully being educated and understanding just impact of these things and being able to recognise. I just often think about in leadership in general, the ability to see a whole person, even while you have all the stress, your own stress and requirements in your role, and everyone's there to get a job done. But we as people need to find a way to recognise we're all people in this together, and we're trying to just live a joyful life whilst we try to show up as our best selves at work as well, to get things done productively for whichever organisation we work with. We just can't forget it.
100%. I mean, this isn't just about fertility. This is about wellness. This is about, life is meant to be fun. Like you said, life is meant to be joyful. People are just trying their best a lot of the time, and managers. This is not to blame managers. This is not to blame hate. Like, there's no blame in this. It's just, we are all, I believe, truly believe, doing our best and showing up in the best way we can with the tools and the strategies we have in that current moment. And that's why I think this is so important, because everyone's got it within them. They just sometimes they need the tools and the strategies and the education and the support to help them step into that best next level version of themselves, so they can either manage, lead, or come into work and give 110%, whatever that, because it is possible to find that balance, but you just have to understand how to do it. So, and understand that everyone has a life, everyone has problems, and how can we best support them from the human side that's going to allow them to shine, really, and if they and step into that next level version so they can give what they need to give in their workplace.
The other people in all of this, of course, are the partners that are alongside. If there's maybe one person in the partnership that has a challenge in reproduction or something that the other doesn't, and then they're trying to support, what does that look like, being the sort of key support person to someone that's going through, whilst you're still going through the challenge yourself, right? Because you're impacted as well.
It's tough. And in some cases, I think, the partner does get left behind. They don't feel they feel like they have to be strong, yet they feel like they can't say that they're not coping because their partner is the one who's physically going through all of the treatments. So they don't feel like they can, it's their right to say anything, or to say, I'm also struggling, but they're on it as well, and they're feeling it just as much as the person who is going through fertility treatment. Like, I know my husband, like, he was, it was so challenging for him, maybe even more so because Brendan had to keep it together, because he was this, when I was falling apart, he was like, it's all right, darling, you'll be fine and we're going to get through this. But I don't think I actually said that to him at all during the process, because I was just in such a hole. There's not the support out there, and there needs to be, because and sometimes it is the male factor. 50% of fertility challenge, so it's the male who is the part of the reason for the infertility, but it's the female who has to go through it. So they're feeling like their manhood is challenged. We say that, women yearn for a baby, so do men, and they put it down to their manlyhood. And, like, if I can't create a baby, then what's wrong with me? Where everyone's saying it. So there needs to be proper support. There needs to be also education and training and discussions about supporting the partner in life and also in the workplace, because that partner has to show up, that husband, that wife, whoever it is, has to show up as well to work, and they're the ones going through it as well. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because for me, that's a really part of this, the missing piece of this puzzle that I'm really passionate about talking about, because they do get left behind. They do feel isolated, and we need to include them because they're on this ride as well.
Yeah, and it's something that, particularly when I think about the male perspective, it's maybe something that they haven't fully consciously like said to themselves, I really want to be a dad. But I think about myself, and Melissa and my wife and I haven't had kids yet, but she's often expressed that, you know, she's often had this picture of herself being a mum and a desire to be a mum. I don't think of myself, I don't identify as someone that was always like, I really want to be a dad. But I do also know that when growing up and picturing my future life, I always saw myself as a dad. And I had that sort of mental model and picture, but I didn't necessarily have it as a statement that I would verbalize as, I really want to be a dad. And so that's probably one of the reasons why, and that might be a common way in which I guess men being fatherhood versus something that they really intellectually articulate. And so it can be perceived as, oh, that women are more tied up emotionally and their identity is more tied up in that. But there's a lot of identity for men tied up in, you know, having children and being a father and what that means to them and stuff. The other thing that was jumping out, because I have definitely heard a lot around, even often the medical treatment side of the burden does often fall on the woman, and that is definitely a challenge and an inequity, I guess, within that. But I don't actually understand why that is. Why is it that if the male has the infertility issue, that the treatment still ends up needing to happen with the woman? Can you help me understand?
Well, I mean, I guess obviously the woman's the one birthing the child. So unfortunately, whatever happens, they're kind of the one that ends up having to go. So for some, you know, depending on, there could be, there's so many different reasons why, you know, it could be a motility issue, there could be something wrong with the sperm, there could be something physically wrong with the male, and it's not, so they need to go through the IVF process in order for it to reach the woman. So I guess, you know, the woman's the one with the uterus, so they get lumped with it. And, you know, it's and sometimes it's just, it just is what it is. You know, there could be a suspected issue with the male, they're not quite sure, maybe it's just not happening, you know, whatever it is. But unfortunately, fortunately, we're the ones with the uterus, so we're the ones that kind of have to go through the bulk. I mean, men still have to go through, depending on the medical issue, they still have to go through a portion of the treatment, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, there's still, you know, a lot, even if it's not related, if it's not kind of surgery or needles or, you know, that kind of thing involved. You know, a lot of the time men do have to make lifestyle changes in order to kind of to boost their fertility, so that there is a slight involvement, and, you know, the doctor will potentially say, you know, to the male, you know, these are the lifestyle changes that we suggest you make, or we want you to make, alongside with the female. So it's obviously not just the female, but at the end of the day, it's the bulk of it's the female, because she's got the uterus, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes sense, because it's the sense that the issue may be that the male's sperm is infertile or whatever, but the result of that might be that the treatment option you have for getting pregnant is you have to go down the IVF route, which is then predominantly target at the female. But are there treatments for male infertility in terms of that could take a male from being infertile to fertile?
Well, I mean, that really depends. And like, I'm not obviously medically trained, so I can't give you. But I mean, mostly, a lot of, like 9 times out of 10 in my experience, male infertility, bar that obviously, well, maybe 80% is lifestyle. So there's things that males can do, and it's usually a 3-month cycle. So, you know, there's diet, exercise, drinking, obviously. There might be supplements.
Keep your phone out of your pocket.
Keep your phone out of your pocket. You know, weight, toxins are massive at the moment. You know, there's like these lifestyle factors are mostly what the males are asked to do in the lead up, and generally, like I said, it's kind of a 3-month turnaround. So, and that generally can improve sperm count or sperm mobility, or, you know, whatever it is that the male is struggling with. I mean, obviously there's different cases if you've had an accident or if something doesn't work properly down there, or, I've actually got a client whose husband's in a wheelchair. So, there's, obviously extenuating issues, nothing wrong with the sperm, but it's obviously need medical intervention, and there's other extenuating circumstances. But I mean, most of the just male related fertility issues would have to do with diet, lifestyle, exercise, that kind of thing. So that can be rectified. And, you can turn it around. Like, body is a master healer. We can turn this around quite quickly if you know exactly what you're working with and then what you need to do to help heal and rectify and move on.
And I guess this kind of leads into the more global conversation that this is a rising issue, right? Like, the infertility globally is becoming quite a significant, well, I guess it's a problem for some and for various reasons. So what do you see on that level? Like, when you're thinking, like, what's going on here globally that's seeing this?
Well, I mean, 1 in 8, I think the World Health Organization said only a couple of years ago, we're struggling, and it revised to 1 in 6 only last year. So we are rising. We're in a club that is rising quite dramatically. I mean, there's just so many factors, and you talk to different people, obviously they've got their own opinion. I mean, we're waiting longer to have kids. I mean, I'm a big, I was a geriatric mother for all 3 of my kids, and I conceived them naturally and birthed them naturally, and they were all, so the medical profession puts the fear of God in us when we turn 35, our fertility decreases by 50%, and all of the things, and absolutely, I 100% agree that as we get older, our fertility does start to decline, and we have to be aware of that. But everyone's an individual as well, and I know many, many women well into their 40s conceiving, giving birth naturally. So we don't want to put the fear of God into everyone. I think that that's really important. But yes, age is a factor. We're stressed out of our brain. And we've normalised it. We're living in chronic stress response, and our bodies are so good at baselining and adapting that we've all adapted to this stress. If we haven't, we're busy. If we haven't had a stressful day, it hasn't been productive. If we haven't been busy, haven't been productive. Oh, such a stressful day, but so much done. Great. No, it's not okay. Like, this is not okay, because our bodies are not designed to live in chronic stress. Obviously, we're designed to go into that stress response, but then we need to baseline. Then we need to go back into balance so we can rest, we can reset all of the little hormones in our body. And somebody described it to me the other day as dancing a symphony, an orchestra. That all the hormones have to be in balance with each other for this orchestra to play. And if our stress hormones, if our cortisol levels, if our adrenaline, all of the things, if they're constantly elevated, we've got a war going on in our body, because our body is trying to bring these hormones down, stress hormones. And the thing is, everything else gets put to one side. So all of those non-essential, like reproductive hormones, reproductive system, it kind of just it gets put to one side, because it's like, I'm trying to sort this out, and this has to wait. So that's a massive issue. I went to a leadership symposium just recently, and I was like, well, women's longevity, what's the biggest threat? Stress. Not anything else, stress. Stress is the biggest killer. Contributes to heart disease. Heart disease, the biggest killer in the world. So we're stressed. And also there's a lot of, I guess, studies around, the environment, toxins, that kind of thing, and how that's contributing. So in my and there's obviously so much more to it, but to keep it simple, that would be my kind of answer to that. But we don't really know. Who knows? But, I think stress. We need to learn to find calm, all of us.
Yeah. And even the ones that like the stress.
Yeah.
They're probably the hardest ones to win over, of going, you need to find a different way. But they're like, but I love it.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like a bit of, like, and this is about finding balance, because we all have different stress thresholds, obviously. But if it gets to the point where it's not serving you, and stress can lead, like, there's so many stress, like perfectionism and people pleasing and leaning into that need to control, that real need to control, need to know, fear of letting go, like all of these, they're not personality traits, they're stress responses. So if we start leaning into these a lot, like perfectionism, what massive, I struggled with it my whole life, all of my clients, but it's not a personality trait, it's a stress response. So if this is occurring in your life, it's like, okay, maybe I need to look within, and how can I help my body find a bit of balance? Because at some point it's going to start shutting down, and you do not want to reach that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Louise, what would be your message of hope to someone that's right in the middle of this right now?
You're not alone, and there is a life on the other side. I know that it doesn't feel like it at the moment, and I know you can't see yourself like anything through the reads, and you can't possibly envisage a life that's not in it, but there is a life. And somebody asked me, well, where do I start? How do I start rebuilding that? Where do I begin? And for me, you've got to start with the foundations, and it's about getting a little bit curious. Like, how can I look at this through a different lens? And this is not taking away from the gravity of the situation. This doesn't change the situation, but we get to decide how we look at a situation. And if we start to look at it through a different lens, then that changes everything. So our brain is designed to make us right. So if we ask it a question, it's going to find all of the evidence to find out, to show us why my body has failed. I'm getting too old. Great. I'm going to find all of the evidence to prove this is right. And then this just solidifies this belief system that I've left it too late. My body is broken. I'm getting too old. No. So what if I was to, think about how you want to feel. Is it light? Is it happy? Is it successful? Is it in control again? And ask your mind, find all of the reasons why I am successful, or I'm happy, or I'm in. And watch your brain remember. I had a client yesterday, and she was just like, I can't, like, I'm in it. I can't remember the last time I felt happy. I was like, well, how do you want to feel? I want to feel happy again. I was like, okay. So we started to do this exercise and look through the different lens. And then all of a sudden she remembered she played tennis on the weekend. She had a coffee, and she watched this movie. Then she was just in this fit of laughter, but she couldn't see it before that. Her brain had forgotten that. And I was like, see, you are actually in that moment very happy on the weekend. So let's cultivate more of that, because we looked at it through. And the thing is, we can't change the situation. It's shit. Like, we can't. But what we can do is we can start to get curious about maybe looking at it through a different lens. And you know what? Once you start to change your vibration, change your energy, this shifts everything. And that's when you start moving forward.
Yeah, that's really powerful. It's why I often talk about take ownership of your career rather than take control of your career. You can't control every aspect of your career. You can't control your boss, your health, your life, in certain situations. Like, what you can do is take responsibility of how you respond next, and the directions that you want to go. And I think that's really relevant here as well. So how can people find you? Thank you for being on the show. This is, I'm really glad to be able to bring this message to people, and have people that are in that space of thinking about their career understand this, for if it's a future challenge, or someone that they know, someone in their workplace, or they might be a leader in their workplace, and how they can approach this conversation and for themselves go and engage with this. How can people find you and work with you?
My name obviously is Louise Siwicki, and I'm the only one in Australia. All of my socials are Louise Siwicki. My website is www.louisesiwicki.com. I like to keep it simple. So just Google my name, you'll find me. As I said, I'm the only one in Australia. And I just want to thank you so much, Alex, for having me on, because the more we talk about, and this isn't just fertility, this is wellness in the workplace. This is about how can we step into that next level version of ourselves, and how can we as leaders support our people to do that from a human side. I think really tapping into heart and feeling into it, and if we do that, then we can't, if we come from that angle, then we can't put a foot wrong.
Absolutely awesome. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for tuning in to Kinda Planned. Subscribe and send this episode to a friend that you think needs to hear it. Or head to my website, www.kindaplan.com.au for free resources, or follow me on LinkedIn and socials so that we can keep the conversation going. Now go unlock your next opportunity.